The Morrow is a bird.
The Twilight Zone does tragic romance in The Long Morrow. This one is definitely among the tighter tales of the final season, yet it's nothing too iconic compared to this saga's grander scale epics. It's a rather simple fantasy romance set within the realm of quirky suspense. However, it does earn tons of praise for being an endearing, if tragic, tale of lost love. In this episode, we follow an astronaut named Commander Douglas Stansfield, who is scheduled to be sent on an experimental space mission by the government. Stansfield must take a rocket flight over to a new solar system of planets, roughly 141 light years away from Earth.
What?
Luckily, as a part of this procedure, the science team has a way to make this possible. Remember how the devious time traveler gang from the Rip Van Winkle caper created cryogenic suspension for a stupid con of robbing gold instead of profiting off their life-changing tech? Well, it turns out that the government actually did something with that. NASA uses the Rip Van Winkle caper cryochambers to freeze Douglas in time, so he can pop over to a lost galaxy and back, without losing his precious lifetime.
Wow, I never thought of it that way. That's really something.
Unlike the Gold Gang, the NASA team have an actual plan. Douglas will be frozen over 40 years to travel on a decades-long journey to there and back, with the suspended animation making a century quest feel like mere minutes. Douglas dares to go where no man has gone before, but oh no! Before his trip, the commander falls in love with a sexy female scientist, Dr. Sandra Horn, and he soon has second thoughts on going on this mission, because when he comes back, he'll still remain the same age, while his hot girlfriend will age into an ugly old lady, or worse, might not even be alive when he gets back. Leading to this episode's dilemma, this new couple coming to grips with an uncertain future. The acting in this is quite decent, as the chemistry between our leads is what carries most of this drama. The Long Morrow has a totally fun sci-fi atmosphere, since a majority of this is being narrated by our protagonist while he slumbers in his freezer tube. Most of the episode is a flashback, while we see Douglas thinking his life over to form his path. I really dig the spaceship and chrome future aesthetic, since it does make the episode visually cool to watch. The conflict is also simple but interesting. It tackles the subject on how strong your love for somebody truly is, since it tests their loyalty for each other thanks to a passage of time, to see if their relationship can withstand harsh obstacles. Because losing your lover for a long time is something that absolutely can make or break a relationship. There is some very deep ethical debate on whether or not it's right or wrong to continue a romance with someone clearly far past certain age limits, as the couple are unsure if they can love the other if one of them grows older beyond senior citizen while the other remains 30. Not exactly eye of the beholder mind-blowing, but it is a real question some in the dating world ask.
Tragic romances always have a happy ending.
Unfortunately, one of the biggest probs I have is also this episode's central focus, the romance. Douglas and Sandra get half the episode dating in a lovey-dovey montage to make you feel for them before the conflict arises. But the biggest complaint I have is that the episode blatantly reminds us that these two have only just met and their love has lasted under 3 hours.
3 hours!
Yeah, this couple who were meant to root for and hope they find a way to save their blooming love only just met and date each other in barely one day. The day before Douglas joins the N7 program, and we're meant to see it as something worth fighting for. Romances have always been hit or miss on the Twilight Zone, and while it does try, it feels rushed. Serling aims for a low-key fairy tale romance, with love at first sight being played straight, and the actors do share some sweet moments. But the fact that it's only 3 hours definitely robs the plot of that gut punch, because the two only know each other in such short time. Honestly, I believe this all could have been saved if the couple were already lovers prior to the story arc. They could have still shown us how the two met and fell in love, but imply a passage of time has passed prior to Douglas agreeing to his Star Trek. I don't think that fix is too unreasonable, since it could have made the tragedy more tragic. The duo still have many adorable moments together, and the episode has a unique conflict here, but it could have used some tweaking to add depth. If you don't care for love stories, then this episode is not going to win you over or amaze. Basically, most of the plot is showing how much the two love each other before Stansfield embarks on his hyperspeed, where he explores the Lost Galaxy and returns to a twist ending. Back on Earth, we get an anime time skip where the future military get message of Douglas's return. However, it turns out that while he was gone, our scientists had found a way to make cryosleep mainstream, and Sandra was able to use it to freeze herself in order to stay hot and young for her man in
The world of tomorrow!
But uh-oh, it turns out that while traversing the cosmos pining for his girlfriend, Douglas made the decision to not re-enter suspended animation on his return trip, and willingly aged a few decades naturally while flying home, and returns as an old man. If you haven't put the puzzle together yet, The Long Morrow is actually a modern remake of The Gift of the Magi. In that Christmas classic, two lovers, a man and a woman, really hope to get their significant other a wicked Christmas present, so they ironically sacrifice the things they love the most in order to get their partner a gift to complement what the other values the most, unintentionally rendering their presents entirely pointless. Yet in a funny gesture to show how much the two truly cared for each other.
But I sold my hair to a wig maker so I could buy a set of combs for Hermes.
Oh, the irony! I sold my hair so I could buy this third set of combs for Zoidbug.
Thank you. These'll come in handy for my new hair.
However, The Long Morrow aims for a tragic irony, as Sandra froze herself to pick their love back up again like nothing happened. But Douglas wanted to spend his final days with her by aging up to the appropriate number, unintentionally ruining their reunion anyway. And if that wasn't enough, the current military general informs Douglas that the scientists didn't need to ship him off into space after all, because they eventually were able to develop sleeker tech that helped them check out alien systems faster and gain the intel they required over sending agents across the cosmos, meaning that mailing people in Mass Effect fields with cryotubes was no longer necessary. Irony! Sandra tries to make it work, but now older and wiser, Stansfield breaks up with her and urges her to start her life anew, as the couple drift their separate ways. The tale ends with the general genuinely complimenting Stansfield how, in spite of all this misery, he is an incredible man who'd put such a premium on love, before the former commander wanders this new world alone. This episode's alright. It's honestly a pretty decent remake of The Gift of the Magi, upgraded with a sci-fi edge and grand imagery, yet it won't blow your mind or even make you ponder your love life by much. A ton of fans like how it's a solid tragic romance and view it as a case of poor communication literally ruining a blooming relationship. However, I kind of interpret it differently. In my opinion, I think the moral of the story is don't waste your precious lifetime pursuing somebody you've only just met. Sandra and Douglas only fell in love in under 1 day, and they were so blinded by love that both ended up sacrificing huge portions of their lives, chasing a romance doomed to fail. Douglas aged into a lonely old man in the hopes of finally getting that slim happily ever after, but instead lost the love of his life because he didn't want her to waste time with a senior on his final days. While Sandra pretty much lost out on years of scientific evolution, societal changes, and entered a world she no longer knows to get her man back, only to lose him too. Even with her being young and hot, she too is now in an unfamiliar land, and no longer a genius scientist since the world she knew has changed. I kind of see this as a tragic example of how we need to make our relationship choices wisely, and not allow ourselves to sacrifice too much for a love that was never meant to be, as life is short. Yeah, a bit of a stretch, but considering how insane the Twilight Zone gets, I don't think it's too radical. Overall, this is a perfectly fine episode, and does a fun job at introducing the gift of the Magi to a newer audience, but sadly, there isn't too much going on, and the romance has an equal amount of weakness as it does strengths. Romance has never been the G1 Twilight Zone strong suit, but this one tried decently enough with a cooler setting surrounding it. I give this episode a silver skull. I'm kind of on the fence about recommending it, since it's not a must-watch legend, but if you love The Gift of the Magi, then this might be a perfect present for you. The Long Morrow is a serviceable story that has very cute moments and a tough love approach for a bad breakup, but it's an alright experiment that could use some more time to thaw out.
Finally, I look as pretty as I feel.
The Twilight Zone.